Over the past 2 days, there have been 3 videos out on the official Guild Wars 2 channel talking about the new raid wing, Wing 3, which is coming on, drumroll, Tuesday. Yeah, on Tuesday is going to be Wing 3. I will cover as much of that as possible for you guys, but ArenaNet are already throwing their hats in there too. Not being particularly spoilery, but they have released these videos talking specifically about the first boss of the next wing. They've given us the name of it, which is Stronghold of the Faithful. Today I want to talk to you guys about what came up in those videos. Mostly it's just some cool behind-the-scenes stuff, but there are some hints and there are some interesting things that they've revealed about the wing that maybe I wasn't so much expecting. So the first video, this is the main one that I really want to talk about. This is a teaser for the wing. Now, straight away, I have to say, if you go to the video, it's got almost 40,000 views at the moment, and it's 50% liked, 50% disliked. Why, once again, is what is basically a cool little teaser for upcoming content, breaking what has been a very long content drought. Why has this got lots of dislikes? Because, again, ArenaNet have made the same mistake they did with another little teaser they did, 2 months ago, where they are filling the video up with tons of dead space and dead time with this big, long introduction, and then this big long outro encouraging people to play the game with only like a marginal amount of actual footage. Come on, guys, you've got to get it right. If you're going to only have a couple of seconds of something for people to look at, you can't have a huge portion of the rest of the video that people have got to sift through and sit through hoping for something more. It just leaves people feeling sour. If this video had come up and it had just been the couple of seconds of whatever this teaser was, boom, people would be on board, they'd be excited. Maybe you can do a little bit of an outro splash, but you don't need to go crazy with it, and I think that's a little bit unfortunate because it just gives all these random people who have a vague eye on the official Guild Wars 2 channel any opportunity they can take to get upset, and instead of being excited by the content, they're not. So yeah, that sucks, but let's talk about what actually came out. So first of all, yes, the wing is called Stronghold of the Faithful, very white mantly. And the idea is, from what we're seeing here, and from what the other videos reveal, it's these kind of behind-the-scenes talks with a couple of the devs, what we seem to be seeing is a big keep or fortified base location that the White Mantle have been living in for presumably a huge period of time. Maybe not the full 250 years since we last saw their activity, but they've been living here and fortifying here for an awful long time. It looks very Divinity's Reachy. It's got a lot of big city assets there. So I wonder whether the entire wing is going to be in kind of these urbanish areas and it's going to feel really city-like the whole time, or it'll be a bit of a mix as we've seen in the other wings where sometimes you're in a bit of a cavey area, sometimes you're in an open fieldy area, sometimes you're in a stronghold, sometimes you're in a little wooden keep with the bandits or whatever. I wouldn't even know how to describe the arena for the Sabbather boss fight in a treehouse. So looking back at the variety of the other wings, I would expect a little bit more from maybe this one. But what do we get in the video? Well, first, really, all the focus is on this boss, and thankfully, I was a little misled when I first watched this trailer. Thankfully, it has not got anything to do with Duke Barradin. Now, I don't say that because of lore. I think Duke Barradin happens to be one of the coolest characters and a part of one of the coolest stories that they've ever told in this franchise, and my account name in game is actually based on Duke Barradin. Barradin, of course, for those who might be a little misunderstanding right now, is the first ghost boss you fight in the tutorial Char area. When I first watched the trailer, I thought that what they'd done was taken Duke Barradin, this rubble, this statue that comes together, held together by spiritual Ascalonian ghost energy, and fights you. I thought they had basically copy-pasted this model, this enemy, and dumped him in the raid and recolored him slightly, and, tuned up his mechanics and given him a few more things, and then called that one of the encounters for the wing. I could understand if ArenaNet would do that they dip into some of their other assets to save on time to actually be able to crank these things out, but I was a little disappointed. And then I went back, and I was like, oh no, hold on, it's not Duke Barradin, it's fine. It is its own completely new special enemy, totally unique boss. Do you guys remember just before Wing 2 came out that they did all these exposés on Slothazor, and they spawned him out in Verdant Brink and stuff and really got to show us what he looked like? It seems this is a common thing with the wings. It's really giving some of these designers a chance to create a really unique, really awesome, interesting boss, and they show it off a lot. And so this is our candidate here. He is totally unique, and he does look very white mantly and very different to Barradin. His abilities in combat are probably going to be very different as well. It doesn't appear that he's fixed in place. He can actually move around. It's just that the theme, once again, is the same. Some rubble that comes together to fight, held together by energy. But the energy this time doesn't seem to have anything to do with ghosts. He's not very blue, he's glowing red. I think it's specifically because we're dealing with bloodstone energy here, which is really weird. I mean, they've done it red. You can even see chunks of bloodstone shards on the creature. The bloodstones, we're all, I think, expecting to have a big role to play in this final wing because we're expecting to go to the bloodstone shard that was in the Maguma jungle. We've already seen hints about it from the previous wing. I'll have a link in the description for you guys to my analysis of the Wing 2 story if you'd like to keep yourselves caught up. So I think this thing is being held together by bloodstone magic. It's interesting that this red glow is somehow associated with bloodstone magic because really, isn't bloodstone magic just all magic? Wasn't it just regular magic kind of thrown in there? Or perhaps there's some more nuances and a bit more of a discussion we can go into there. He seems to be a construct of the White Mantle. I like the idea of the White Mantle having constructs, having golems for themselves, by the way, because of course they worship the Masat, who the Masat, once upon a time, we knew to be manufacturers of golems and things that did their bidding for them. And it's kind of like the White Mantle are trying to follow in their footsteps almost. Now, the other thing to notice quite obviously about this guy is it is modeled after a statue. Some of it seems to be pillars and random bits of rubble from, you know, this White Mantle architecture in the area, but it also does seem to have formed itself into a statue, like it was a broken statue at some point and it's come back together. That face on that statue eerily cut directly in two, which is very cool. Some people are speculating could be Confessor Isaiah. So there's an image of Isaiah on the screen here for you guys. Little crash course for you back in Guild Wars 1 when we knew the White Mantle. They had an appointed leader. That leader's title was known as the Confessor. And the first Confessor that we knew was Confessor Dorian. Dorian was killed in a climactic battle in the southern Shiver Peaks amongst his allies and in like a three-way battle for a dwarven stronghold against a bunch of Stone Summit dwarves too and Dagnos Stonepate. And when you read it from the history books, it's a really epic moment. That was when Confessor Dorian died. And later on, after Eye of the North, and during the events of the War in Kryta, where the royal family of Kryta regained their independence from these evil cultist overlords, they had appointed a new guy to replace Confessor Dorian, and that Confessor was Confessor Isaiah. So we do have a little bit of lore about him, because when they did the War in Kryta, they put out all this cool little information on their websites, like propaganda flyers and general background information from both sides of the conflict. So this is White Mantle propaganda. This is what the White Mantle thought of Confessor Isaiah, who potentially could be the man we're seeing in this statue, you know, a statue carved to be his likeness. The exalted leader of the White Mantle and Kryta, Confessor Isaiah is a kind, just ruler whose wisdom is only matched by his humble piety. A former disciple of the martyred Confessor Dorian, Isaiah now leads the White Mantle by following his dead mentor's example. So that's what the White Mantle believed him to be, but the Shining Blade believed him to be this. They say the leader of the White Mantle and self-described ruler of Kryta, Isaiah is a cruel tyrant whose hypocrisy is only matched by his greed. Ever since his master, Confessor Dorian, was slain by freedom fighters, Isaiah has led the remnants of the White Mantle. Desperate to regain control in the face of revolution, Isaiah has imposed severe laws, made mass arrests, and has hired brigands to harass innocent Krytans. Confessor Isaiah is as foul and evil as the creatures he worships. That thing about the brigands is true, by the way. The devs that were responsible for doing the War in Kryta stuff did something really cool. Back in Guild Wars 1, the earliest moments of the story took place 2 years before the rest of the game, in an area called Pre-Searing. It was Ascalon was happy, and before the Searing was brought down upon those people by the Char. And when you roamed the Ascalonian countryside, they had all these really weird enemies, like these brigands, basically, that would wander around and look kind of like dwarves and kind of just odd in some ways, that were never explained in any lore or had anything to do with anything. And after the Searing, after this one little area of the franchise you could find them in, you never saw them again. And when the War in Kryta came out, the developers looked at those old creatures, those old enemies, and said, hey, let's put them in the current timeline. And so there's this idea that Confessor Isaiah hired them, and then these thugs were wandering around in Kryta during the Civil War, which was very, very, very cool. cool, and I always liked that. And so now we come to today, where it seems maybe after this confessor was cut down too in the Civil War, the small white mantle cell that remained built a statue of him, perhaps, and then it got destroyed, or somehow it's now just being possessed by this bloodstone energy, and we're gonna fight it as a boss. Obviously, none of that's confirmed. It may not be that confessor at all. Hell, it could be Dorian, or it could be anyone else. It may have no impact on the story whatsoever. This guy could be as minor of a boss as Slothazor, but it's an interesting connection to think about nonetheless. And story-wise, that's all I'm willing to say right now about this guy. There are some interesting theories and other angles to go down, but I may save them for a future video. Let's have a look at the setting next, instead of the boss himself. And what you're going to find is, at first, it seems to be set in the Temple of Salvation from the previous wing, where we defeated Matthias. But if you do pause, if you do freeze frame, you'll notice, obviously, the windows here are looking very different. They're stained glass windows. It's obviously somewhere new. And as the little teaser goes forward, we see that kind of a big burst of energy comes out of the statue boss, destroys the roof, and pans out to reveal we're actually in quite a heavily developed area. Some of the devs explicitly do say, actually, in the behind-the-scenes videos, that they are borrowing a lot of Divinity's Reach-looking assets, and you can see that here. This is maybe, yes, white mantle architecture, but it's also human architecture, and you can see it's actually quite a well-built-up area. The next shot as well lingers for such a brief period of time on the screen, but what it seems we're actually looking at here is the death whale, the death animation of the boss, and the camera's kind of lingering, looking off far away. It seems to suggest to me that what they're hinting at is after you kill this boss, you're going to go over here, deeper into the wing, and when we look deeper into the wing, you actually see some floating islands. I'll remind you guys as well that we've had some developer comments as of, 2 weeks ago now, that they're warning us that in Wing 3 you will need ley line gliding. It's going to be a big part of this wing, and combining that knowledge with what we're seeing here, it strikes me that a large amount of this wing may not just be in city areas, but it could be flying across vast distances, going to small floating islands and pockets of areas that we can fight on. Maybe even we'll have an encounter a little bit like the Spirit Wall encounter we had in Wing 1, except this time in the sky with different ley lines that turn on and off in different locations. It would make sense that there's a lot of ley line energy, perhaps, manifesting around the Bloodstones, but I actually think that ley line gliding might not just be a minor thing. When I first heard that developer quote, I thought, oh, it's just going to be like how you have to glide during the Gorseval fight, just a small bit at a small moment. Well, instead, actually now, I'm thinking there could be a lot based on that last shot, and that's quite exciting to me. Who doesn't want to fly around? This will be like as close as we get to Aeon as possible in Guild Wars 2, and we'll see how far off of the mark I seem to be on that one there. So that's about it. That's what we got from the teaser. I will very quickly talk about the bonus videos. So these are really cool. First of all, I think these are awesome. It's nice to see that the guys who are working on this promotional material for the game have found a nice little niche or whatever for them to work on. I wonder also, because they've done this, whether when Living World comes out as well, that we'll get some behind the scenes for that also. It would make sense, even looking back at Living World Season 2, there's a lot of big, complicated, interesting moments that happened there, and, the devs definitely could have talked about things like that. The other thing I really liked about this too was there's a lot of new faces, a lot of people we haven't really seen on the Guild Chat live streams, a lot of people that obviously have been working for a long time and have never really interfaced with the community too much. Bobby Stein was in one of these videos, but I didn't really recognize any of the other developers, and they all had interesting, cool stuff to say, so that's great, and I do hope that we see some more of that for Living World, because that's one of the main outcries at the moment. People are still seeing, oh look, raid content and only raid content, where's the rest of it for the other supposed 99%? I think probably a lot more people raid than 99% people in Guild Wars 2 not raiding, but hey, maybe that's a discussion for another time. So, what was really discussed here? Well, both videos focused on the boss. The art video, which came second, is very low viewed, and it didn't really have that much I can pick at, though there's a lot of interesting talk in it. They're kind of talking about how they originally had a completely different boss that was, as you can see on the screen right now, an oversized earth elemental looking golem with a turret on it and a spinning. It's really interesting. And a cool looking enemy, but not very fitting with the wing. And the first time I saw this in the videos, I thought, yeah, that doesn't fit. What they wanted was something much more white mantle-y, so they iterated on it, and now we've got the Confessor Isaiah, perhaps, looking statue instead. But this thing looks cool to me. I would really like to see this Earth Elemental appear somewhere else in the game. Surely they can reuse something like that. As a developer, you must always struggle with that. What's good? What's a design to scrap and iterate on? What's something to save for another area? I'd love to see some of these guys wandering around, or maybe like a new world boss implemented somewhere. He's cool, he just doesn't fit. And mostly that's what the developers are talking about, changing this design, giving it new animations, and some of the designers as well, who aren't responsible for the art, but once the art comes in, saying, hey, yeah, now I'm changing the kind of attacks I want this creature to have because I've seen how it looks visually, and you know, that's given me some inspiration for this, or this. Bobby is talking a little bit about the writing. Naturally, I found that more interesting than the other stuff. Sorry to say to all the other wonderful things that were said in the video. I did. You can maybe pick at the developer comments here and suggest that the White Mantle were here for 250 years guaranteed, but I'm not really sure whether that counts as canon on a video like this. It did seem quite offhanded. Bobby talked a little bit about how the major story beats, the big moments for the White Mantle story of the future, have been known to them, but exactly how they get from beat to beat to beat has been a little bit more free-flowing. This is a philosophy and a way of video game writing that I think you see across the board and is very smart. And he kind of says that they go a bit bananas with the story in this wing.
We could allow the team to get crazy, and I think that probably shows. I think once people start playing the Keep construct, they'll realize that the whole concept is a little bananas.
So I wonder what that could mean, but definitely thinking again back to the ley line, thinking about the floating stuff. I think we could see some really interesting concepts going forward with this supposedly bananas story. And there's another interesting thing to point out as well, and this was their view about why they're doing the White Mantle in the raid story. And so the perspective seems to be this, that maybe because it's been so long since Guild Wars 1, and maybe because it's been so long since we've dealt with the White Mantle, the Messiah in general, you got a lot of Guild Wars 2 players who don't really know who these villains are, even though it's kind of one of these story threads that they've wanted to pick back up. So what they're doing is talking about the White Mantle in Guild Wars 2 now, and kind of giving people that crash course on who they are, which Wing 2 does very well, for people who are only playing Guild Wars 2. That way, if at any point they do want to, you know, seriously go gung-ho on the White Mantle story and the Messiah story and the Sol D'Alessio stuff perhaps in the future, there are Guild Wars 2 players who can go to a place in Guild Wars 2 to learn about the White Mantle and the Messiah, instead of having to rely on wikis, and instead of having to rely on people like me, and instead of having to play Guild Wars 1, which is such a different game, and especially as time goes forward, an increasingly dated game. People don't have to do that, and so this could have been a reason why we saw the White Mantle and the Messiah in the raid. And so I wonder what that means for where the story will be left at the end of this wing. Is it going to wrap up nicely? Well, I doubt it. But does this mean, then, that if it doesn't wrap up nicely, we're immediately going to continue that story, or are we going to leave it again for a while? I mean, the second raid entirely that we get, what's going to define it as a different raid? Just because it's in a different geographic location? Or is it going to continue with the White Mantle story? Is it going to be a completely new story again, and we'll be left waiting with the White Mantle till it gets full-time focus from the company by way of Living World or by way of an expansion? I don't know. That's curious. So there you go. Those are the videos, guys. That's basically what was talked about. That's the first boss of the new wing. It's coming out on Tuesday. I will be covering it as best I possibly can. Thanks very much for watching, everyone, and I'm looking forward to see what ArenaNet have for us by way of these supposed bananas. Cheers, everyone. Have a great evening, and I'll see you next time. Then I'll send you to the gods. What crime did you witness today? The boy's translucence rippled, and I saw the fear in his face. I directed my magic at him, guided it over him like a mother's touch, and saw him relax. You can tell me. He buried his face in his hands.